Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds, where you can find quality content for the game Last Epoch. We work hard here at Epic Builds and would appreciate a comment and a like, as that's the best way to tell YouTube we are doing a good job. All of these builds are homegrown, no save file editing, no deception, no underperforming setups, just epic builds. Cue the video. Alright, in this video, we're going to be going over part 2 of the Bleed Hail of Arrows build guide. So now we're in Empowered Monoliths, we're farming Corruption, we're getting our blessings. I just got the 100% bleed chance blessing. It's absolutely insane for the build, as more bleed chance, the better. We did swap over to a pop puncture playstyle, meaning we're popping our bleeds with puncture, not because it gives us any more damage or anything like that, but because of the sustain, as we had to get rid of the chalice to appropriately get resistances on our gear. Now, later on, once you're doing more monoliths and you get more of the resistance blessings, you can eventually swap out of a relic, like a rare relic, and then swap into a chalice, as that will give you 50% duration. So for instance, on the dummy, I'll be doing like 1.4 million pops on the dummy. But if I have the chalice, I'll be doing 2 million pops on the dummy. So it's like about around there. The max DPS on this build right now is about 250k per second, which is very respectable considering that judgment build was getting up to like 500k, and that was considered strong. So far, it's going very well with the build. Salt the Wounds is giving us a lot of bleed damage. So for instance, if we have it on, we're like 700 bleed on our character sheet. But if we have it off, it's actually like 300 bleed. So it's actually more than doubling our damage. So that's a lot of bleed effect. Well, that's only on the sheet though, because I believe that there's a little bit of diminishing returns because of the way we're doing shift into the bleed duration of the bleed effect, which is still in the build as it's so strong. So the difference between this and other HoA builds is this is built a lot more for arena. So, for Monolith. So we're not having to do a 5-button combo just to clear packs in Monolith. We actually can just shift, attack with HoA, and then make sure our puncture stacks are up. And it actually leads to somewhat buttery smooth playstyle in the Monolith. It's pretty chill. I used it to farm some uniques I needed for the next few builds, and it was an absolute blast. Now, I did test it. You will have like half your DPS if you do not have Salt the Wound. So this build is viable with only Sanguine Horde. Now, does that mean you should? No, but it is viable. So that's pretty nice to know. Also, I got some perfect idols, like we got hail duration plus fizz damage over time. Those are absolutely insane because the more hail duration you have, the more bleeds you apply on the target. Because since we're not going for the single HoA with the 50% more duration, we can actually apply more than one HoA on the target. So for instance, a complete HoA will do like a 2 million bleed pop, but we can do more than just one HoA on a target if we want to for single target, right? We can just spam HoAs, or we can go for the full combo with the shadows, because we did incorporate the shadow combo with Dark Quiver, as that's one of the best ways of augmenting your single target. And to be honest, you only ever need to do it on stuff like Orbis or Monolith bosses. And since you only have to do it on bosses, it's actually kind of fun, because it's like you do that big button combo and bam, you're doing like 40k ticks on the boss. It's absolutely amazing. So you must be wondering, in the footage, I'm running an obsidian bow. So I'm running an obsidian bow right now because one has a 1.1 attack rate, and it also has 100% increased physical damage on it. So early on, an obsidian bow is better than a northern bow. Northern mode gives you bleed chance on bow hit, right? But you want the obsidian bone early on until you get your perfect percentage damage rolls, and then after that eventually it'll be more worth to get the bleed chance instead, as the more bleed chance at that point the better, because you'll have enough percentage damage to scale your damage, so you'll just need bleed. Resistances was a little bit annoying on this build as we're utilizing two uniques, both of them in resistance slots. I do not have a well-rolled Salt the Wounds for resistance, so I have to make up for that fact by having extra resistance everywhere. I crafted one of the best helmets I've ever crafted in the entire time I've ever played the game ever, which I'll showcase when we get into the footage here, which we'll do right now. So let's get into the game, shall we? Here we are in game with the build. The name is Buff Shadow Daggers because, you know, obviously. So, I'm going to just go into the skills here. So for Bleed HoA, first thing I will note, this node right here, Complete Trap, this does not affect damaging ailments. Do not grab this build if you're doing poison or bleed. Obviously, if you grab 1 point to get to Acid Rain, obviously that's fine. Just don't grab it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. 4 points into Volley for increased area, 1 point travel, and 1 point into Sky Strike for the initial barrage. The reason why we care about the initial barrage is because it will actually deal a hit, which will take our bleed chance, which will be a lot more than this in actual combat. So it will just be an extra second, quote unquote, of tick, if that makes sense. And of course, we take 1 point into Condemn. The reason why we run this is because Chapter 9 mobs. Now, there's the rogues, there's like everything that's like everything that moves a bunch, this completely destroys, which is very, very nice. And of course, for rares, it slows them down, meaning the beetles and stuff like that. But it sucks that it doesn't like immobilize the beetles, but there's not really much you can do about that. Then we take 4 points into Steady for duration. The longer HoA lasts, the more single target damage it will do because the more time it will apply bleeds. Then 5 points into Focus for 40% more damage. Then of course 5 points into Pristine Fletcher for 90% more damage. We don't really care about the reduced area as we're going to be spamming hail of arrows, so we have actually no issues in that regard. But and of course for Puncture, this is your stereotypical bleed puncture tree. We have a few new additions, mainly for Mind Piercer for extra mana, so that we're always good on mana, but the usual setup with Bloodthirst and Hunger, so that we get a bunch of bleed chance with our HoA because it takes your global and bleed bow bleed chance, so you'll be dealing more damage thanks to that, and you can tell the bleed stacks, we give you a better... So this is like what you would do for monoliths, about that. And it's about pretty good. It's like 30, 40k ticks on the dummy. That's good enough to clear most trash. You can always, add more HoAs, which is one of the strengths of this build, is being able to stack HoAs. You can go even stronger, like I said, with a Dark Quiver Smoke Bomb route as well. Stereotypical Smoke Bomb tree, mainly we're just getting the Silver Shroud stack, and of course the Umbral Assault, so that we have shadows for our Dark Quiver. So our shift tree is special. We take 4 points into Velocity for extra damage for our next shift. So the combo is Puncture till you're up to stacks, and of course you can always refresh by hitting again, and then to shift, and then attack. And then that's the combo. That's all you really do through Monolith. You just run around, do this through Monolith, make sure your Bleeding Fury stacks are up, and then HoA, and you do pretty respectable amounts of damage, even though we're trying to just, move around, obviously, right? Now, of course, I have the bleed pop puncture, so that the dots won't look that big because we're actually popping our bleeds from our HoA, which makes the damage happen instantly, obviously. Then, of course, we're grabbing Hypovolmia. This applies to your Hail of Arrows. This will apply your Hail of Arrows per second, and it's multiplied by your, of course, by your Sanguine Horde. Then 2 points into Jagged Cuts. This will also apply to all the bleeds applied by your next HoA. The bleed effect is very nice, and of course the bleed duration is essential, as the more bleed duration you have, the more single target you have. Also, bleed duration is very strong while farming Monolith, because one of the biggest issues with with HoA, the regular HoA, is the mob will move out of the HoA, right? Like they'll move out of the HoA and then they'll stop taking damage because they're not in the AoE. But since we're bleeding them per second and their bleed duration is just as long as the HoA itself, pretty much at this point, I believe, what that means is you have a lingering effect, quote unquote, and things die even if they move out of your AoE. They just have to walk into your AoE and then they'll die, which is very, very strong. And of course, you take 1 point into momentum for just some extra movement speed. There's not really much else you can do. You could obviously take some points out of this and go to like lasting presence later on for when you want to do more shenaniganery, but that's pretty much it for shift. You're just using it for extra damage. Then Dark Quiver. This is your stereotypical Dark Quiver setup for damage over time HoA, just the 48% more damage. Then of course a bunch of more damage thanks to Umbra Resolution. Just a lot of more damage because it makes our single target feel really good, especially on Oribus and stuff. So pretty much here you go. This is like the single target. We get to like about 200,000-ish ticks on the dummy. Out there, yeah, 200,000-ish ticks with that. And of course, if we bleed pop, it's even more, like a big pop, like 2 million pop, just like the thumbnail shows. And that's pretty much it for the skills. So let's talk about the passives. So my passives were a little borked, and that's just because my current gear is actually kind of trashy. I don't have that much dodge on my gear, meaning that my glancing blow chance is at 100. But if you have perfect gear, you could get to 100% glancing blow chance with just your gear and a little bit on the tree. So I had to make a few changes here. So this will be a little bit different than in the build planner, the finished one. But of course, you should focus on getting the gear that's in the finished build planner. This is just what I was running while I could. Now we take 7 points into Steady Hand for HP, as the more HP we get, the better, because we want to be chunkier. The Dexterity helps because it's a flat 4 dex per point, which will work with Apostasy to give us more glancing blow chance. 1 point into Guile for dodge, chance, travel, and of course 5 points into Evasion, because 90% of the time we're going to be moving with this build because we're stutter stepping, right? And then obviously we're shifting and shooting. Like we're most of the time moving, so that's really nice. Also, the increased dodge will increase the amount of dodge we have for Apostasy. And then of course 5 points into dodge and parry. This actually gives us a lot of glancing blow chance thanks to the fact it's dodge and glancing blow at the same time. And of course we take 4 points into sapping strikes to make our puncture, give us mana back, because we have a little bit of a mana regen setup so far, just a very small amount, so that when I just go to just shift and attack, by the time I go to shift and attack again, I'm like at max mana, which is all we really need, right? Then of course, so one thing I noticed is this node right here, Disembowel, this will only apply 5 bleeds once. It will not apply 500% bleed chance for the entire duration of HoA, so this is in fact a trap. And of course for Blade Dancer here, because bleed does not have that much support in Marksman, that means that we actually end up putting a lot of points into Blade Dancer, and the reason why is so that we can get Apostasy. Apostasy takes my dodge chance and doubles it into glancing blow chance. Now, glancing blow is 35% less damage taken. It's almost as good as minimal investment block, which is why it's so dang strong. It's pretty much a 35% damage multiplier, pretty much a 35% multiplier to my HP, and it's actually really, really strong because of that. Right? So, glancing blow, good. So you just take points to get up there. Obviously, the dex, glancing blow, you get the increased HP because you want as much HP as possible. The chance to gain dust rounds when hit are actually pretty strong because when you get hit, your glancing blow chance will go up, which is pretty cool. Then, of course, now for Marksman, we take 8 points into Draining Arrows for increased bow attack speed. So I do not run bow attack speed on my weapon because we run crit multi and physical damage, right? So that means that we get all of our attack speed from the tree, which is enough for puncture for our purposes, right? You could always get more attack speed on your bow, but like I said, there's not that many things to actually grab inside of the Marksman tree for us. So this is just extra points, right? Might as well, right? 1 point travel into Focus Fire, 1 point travel into Assassin's Quiver, 1 point travel into concentration, a 1 point travel into wound maker. As you can tell, like not much actually helps us. 4 points into prolonged demise for just increased damage. Then, of course, 6 points into mediation. You probably want more points in this because that flat dodge will be applied at double its rate and then turned into glancing blow chance, which is very strong. We take 5 points into heightened senses because it will give us a free suffix, as we only need just 2 suffixes of critical strike avoidance to reach cap. So that's why this is strong for us. 10 points into barbed arrows, a double dipping node for us because we want the fizz damage and the bleed bow per chance on hit. And then, of course, 1 point travel into barrage of pain because the crit chance does nothing for us. Then 10 points into ethereal arrows. Our bow mana cost is 61, so this is in theory giving us 300% more damage, which is a lot of increased damage, mind you, as we don't get that much otherwise. So, and this makes the next bow attack give you a bunch of increased mana cost, a bunch of increased damage, and that's the majority of our increased damage. 2 points in the Master Archer for increased area, might as well, right? And of course, 5 points in a perfect aim. The reason why this works is because it is a global critical strike multiplier, and since Salt the Wounds is converting said global critical strike multiplier, I can show you, as I gain stacks of the crit multi, my bleed will go up because of the fact that we have the crit multi, right? So for instance, if I show you my damage right now, we have 354 crit multi, then we go back to 241. So it's actually converting all of my crit multi, at least most of it, obviously, right? And that's pretty much it for the passives. Like I said, for the last few points, just fill out mediation, get as much dodge as possible so that you can cap your glancing blow chance. Because once you do, you will feel like a tank. You'll feel very strong as a marksman. A lot of people complain about how squishy marksman is, but if you go for the apostasy route and go for as much HP as you possibly can on gear, go for your endurance, get your crit avoid, you're actually very tanky as a marksman. So that's actually pretty cool. Now for the items, the only required 100% required unique is Sanguine Horde, obviously, right? Because it's the only way of applying your bleed chance per second with Hail of Arrows. Obviously, the build would not function without this. I was lucky enough to get a very well rolled one, as 125% is very strong because it takes all of your bleed chance and times it by 1.25. So your bleed chance is actually 25% more efficient, which is really cool. Also, the minus mana cost on Hail of Arrows, that's actually kind of cool for us because we don't want our Hail of Arrows cost to be too high, as that will cause issues later on. So definitely just having that minus 12 is actually kind of cool. So if we actually take it off, I believe we're at 61 right now. We'll be at 75. So that's like good enough of a difference to make it so that when I puncture, I get all my mana back, which is good enough for most situations. Now for our idols, this is literally the perfect idol. Run 4 of these. Absolutely perfect. The longer HoA is up, the more bleeds it applies. And of course, the fizz damage over time applies to the bleeds, which is very, very strong. This is like literally one of the best idols I've ever dropped in terms of how well it's rolled and in terms of how good it is for the build that I'm playing. This build is a miracle, I'm going to be honest. Then, of course, we want hybrid HP idols as much as we can, because since we're focusing so much into glancing blow, the more HP we get, the more efficient our tankiness is. The only thing that will kill you often is dots, and pretty much what that means is run a cleanse pot, have max poison res, and of course don't stand in diamond matron beams like I do all the time. Now for a helmet, this right here, literally perfect helmet. Like obviously some of the rolls are kind of bad, like T4, but it's enough. It's exactly what we want. 60 instability, by the way. You want it on the Umbral Visage because global crit multi. You want the chance to bleed on bow hit, or of course the more damage with the bow. The Hail of Arrows duration because you want as much as possible. This is like 3 idols worth of Hail of Arrows duration, which is very strong. And of course endurance and HP. Very, 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 very strong helmet. The amulet, you want the mana regen, crit multi, dodge and dodge. This dodge is very strong because I can show you. We go to 65 into 75. This 10% chance to take 30% less damage. And when you put it that way, it actually sounds very strong. I got a really well-rolled implicit as well because, You definitely want resistance with this build. Then, of course, for the bow, this is your stat perfect bow. I just didn't roll it well. I'm going to be honest, I really rolled this like, I think it was like 10 minutes after I made the last video, and I haven't been able to improve it since then because it was actually a meme on stream because I would literally take a bow, start crafting on it, it would fracture after the second craft, and that would happen constantly all the way until today. So yeah, this is what we're stuck with. Obviously, you'd want to run a northern bow later on for the bleed chance, but right now, since my idols aren't perfectly rolled, because we don't have fizz damage over time here, right? We have it on these two, but we don't have it on these two. Once you have fizz damage over time on all four of your idols, you could probably move into a northern bow and be just fine. Although obsidian bow is just like, the margin of difference is so utterly small that it doesn't matter. It's just a northern bow will technically be better DPS later. That's all you need to know. And of course, like I said, the 1.1 attack rate's insane because it makes our puncture really, really, really fast, which is nice because it's our mana, right? And of course, for the chest, this is your almost stat perfect belt. I would rather run increased dodge here because we get a lot of flat dodge from the tree, ironically, because of the dexterity and, of course, the flat dodge here. So this would actually be more efficient if that flat dodge was increased dodge. You could also run the poison res base, which is actually usable now thanks to the fact that EHG decided that poison was going to do actual damage. So having poison resistance is probably a good idea. Or you can run a Crimson Guard, either way. But yeah, otherwise it's stat perfect. We don't need plus to levels for HoA because we grab all the useful nodes. So that actually makes the build a lot cheaper thanks to the fact we don't need +2. Then for the rings, damage, avoidance, dodge, damage, avoidance, dodge. This ring's terrible, I just realized. Oh my goodness. Of course, Salt the Wound. This is your next upgrade after Sanguine Horde. I will show you why. It's pretty simple. I can show you exactly why. So let me take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. And you get the picture of why this is your best upgrade. Where do I farm this? Salt the Wound. Where do I farm this? I actually get this question a lot. Monoliths, right? We go to Ending the Storm, right? I'll show you here so that you understand where to target farm this. So if we go to Monoliths and we click on this, it'll say, in this timeline, you have rewards that grant unique or set gloves. Literally, all you do, go into the Monolith, find ones that have the gloves, right? The unique set or gloves. Do them as much as possible. Use Vessels of Memory to reset your Monolith so you can run them again. Run as many as possible, and eventually you will get them. And of course, for Sanguine Horde itself, if you actually want to farm Sanguine Horde as well, either before you make the character or after you make the character and you're just leveling with a different kind of version of HoA or something else, you want to focus here for that instead. I can show you what the thing looks like if we can find one. I wish they would add a search feature, but I understand why they wouldn't. Let me find it. Is there one here? I'm curious if there is. I don't know what it looks like. One moment here. Yeah, it's not here. It's so weird. I don't see one yet. Huh. That's so weird. Huh. Yeah, there's like no unique quivers. Okay, it looks like this thing. That's what it looks like. I couldn't find one for some reason. But yeah, that's how you farm these uniques, by the way. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that, like, because I've been actually being harassed because my builds have been including uniques. Oh my god. Like this update has like so many cool uniques to play with. Why would I not make build guides on the uniques, right? So obviously we have uniques. That's how you get them. Then of course the belt, you want the cleanse, mana regen, crit avoidance, health. So you're capped on crit avoidance, health. That should be hybrid health. These boots are pretty good. They're just rolled really poorly. And of course, this is the relic that I was talking about. You can swap this relic out for a chalice here. Where is it? A Valdir's Chalice. So this will make your sustain while doing monoliths way easier, but let me show you why I'm not running it. That's why I'm not running it. So later on, once you get better stuff, so pretty much what you do is you go through monoliths and get all the resistance blessings, like the void res from, well, not void res, you want crit multi from Mariah, get better lightning res from Ending the Storm, you get like fire res from here, You get cold res or fizz res from here, which I think I have. Once you do that, you will eventually be able to swap this out for a Valor Chalice once you have better gear, much better than what I have right now. And of course, as well, you can also turn these from hybrid idols into resistance idols instead to cap your reses. You can always do that instead. That's one perfect way of doing it as well. So you can swap into a Valor Chalice, but mega endgame, you definitely want a Valor Chalice, is that 50% bleed duration is absolutely insane on single target. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the build today. I plan on coming back to this build eventually when I feel like it, when things change enough. But with that being said, this was the absolute best. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye.